May the 4th be with you. A special edition of The Breakdown starts now. Good evening and welcome to this special primary edition of The Breakdown. I am Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson. And Rick, we've been on hiatus for a couple of weeks and some stuff has happened since we've been away, but I want folks to know we'll be back to our regular scheduled programming the week of May 16th. But because primary season has kicked off, we felt it was really important to make sure that we did a show and gave our analysis about what's happening because we know that our loyal LPTV viewers want to hear from us. So here we are. And Rick, guess what? It wasn't just the primary. It's been a rather eventful week here in political world.
A couple things have happened. A few small events that may or may not have been, tectonic in nature have occurred. So yeah.
Yes. We're no one was prepared for the SCOTUS Roe v. Wade flap to unfold on Monday night in a leak, which is unprecedented. This doesn't happen coming out of the Supreme Court ever. And so that's kind of thrown things a little bit. Like you said, it's been a tectonic shift in political world and just across the country what it means for women's rights. And here at the Lincoln Project, even though we're not a policy organization, but we recognize that when you start to politicize the Supreme Court and when you start talking about a woman, constitutional rights and women's agencies over their bodies, we have to speak up because this is it. I said it is the personification of elections have consequences.
Sure. Look, I have a great resistance to the idea that the Supreme Court is ridden with leaks. I think it is an enormously important institution in our country. It is one of the few that people, up until this moment, still considered to be somewhat above the immediate craziness of day-to-day American social media politics. And I find it to be an extraordinary coincidence that when this leak popped out very late on Sunday night, the right-wing media machine already had pieces produced for Fox News at the crack of dawn, and almost every single Republican politician in the country was trying to get on the air to say the same thing over and over again. This leak, it's insurrection. This leak is really corrupt. This leak, the leak. They focused so much on the leak itself. When the whole discussion became leak qua leak, not leak leading to the end of Roe v. Wade.
Right, a 50-year established law.
A lot about where it may have come from. And I suspect, I don't have any evidence from inside the court, obviously. I suspect that this was something that was known on the right, that was put out by someone inside the court on the right. I have a couple of ideas of who it might be. I mean, maybe someone who's already used the court to protect themselves from the 1-6 commission hearing might have heard about it, but I don't know. But what you've seen is this massive blow up about the leak itself and trying to make it about a liberal conspiracy. It
and
sure
process.
Smells to me, the old Key Bono rule, sure smells to me more like this might have come out from the right. I think we'll find out eventually. There's a lot of reporters working the story right now.
And Chief Justice Roberts has said that they're opening an investigation into this, which I don't know how comfortable folks within the Supreme Court are going to be with having a forensic analysis of looking at what they do, who, when, where, and how, because they're so used to being insular and secretive and kind of their own little fiefdoms there. But I think you're right about that. And the whole idea of the use of the term insurrection was purposeful. It was coordinated.
Completely.
And this is what the Republicans do. This is what the right does and does very well. And we have to be prepared for that because it takes a word that's being used or a concept that's being used about them that's factual. and in trying to diffuse it and to water it down. So now
That's right.
everything's an insurrection.
That's
so then
right.
everything's an insurrection. So nothing's an insurrection.
That's
as
right.
absurd as it is, that implying that this unprecedented leak from the Supreme Court somehow equates a freaking insurrection is just nonsensical. But when you repeat it and repeat it, repetition creates reality. It's political science 101 that I learned back in my first political science class at George Washington University a long time ago. And you are a GW alum as well, Rick.
I have to say the repetition idea on this is something I think our friends on the Democratic side, they need to narrow the focus of this, I think, rather quickly.
Correct.
What you have right now is a sense and a moment that there's something radical happening, and to deal with the realities of the U.S. on one level, that America's always had an uneasy consensus on abortion,
right?
And I will speak as plainly as I can about the matter for both sides of the aisle. And my personal opinion on it doesn't make a bit of difference. This is the objective reality of the polling and the political temperature. There has always been a spot that Bill Clinton identified very, very accurately.
Safe,
Americans
legal,
want
and
abortion
rare.
to be safe, legal, and rare. There you go. That's exactly right, Tara. And they have always, from the beginning, and you can find this over time, the numbers have not gone crazy in either direction. There are always been about 15% of Americans who absolutely believe in no abortion anytime, anywhere whatsoever for any reason. And there are about 15% of Americans who think abortion is great and wonderful and every woman should try one and they should be available for free at drive-thrus. And I know I'm drawing a slightly clownish caricature on both ends of the spectrum, but it's a small percentage. Most Americans were, from Roe forward, they were uncomfortable with it. They didn't think it was something that wasn't without moral complexity, but they also did not want to ban it. And they certainly didn't want to ban it in the cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Now, on third trimester stuff, that's where the Democrats lose a lot of ground with a lot of voters because they were very insistent about that for a long time. But this uneasy consensus that existed for a long time was based on Roe. And there was there was a 40-year plan. And folks, in politics, a plan beats no plan every time.
It's like war.
They had a plan for 40 years. They would go at it on three different axes. And it's important you understand how they built this machine, because it's a machine. The Federalist Society started recruiting attorneys way back in the day. I don't know when the foundation was, but it's a long, long play. Okay. Those attorneys became judges. Those judges became people who were amenable to hearing the complaints against Roe. And legal scholars will tell you that Roe has a lot of legal and technical flaws in the decision and the way in which it was arrived. And so the pro-choice folks were always resting the protection of abortion rights on something that the Republicans had identified early had legal flaws, and had decided to spend 40 years chipping away at the foundations of it.
Yep.
This is the last act in the dance, which pushes it back to the states. And as we know, that's going to be a thing that further divides this country.
Yeah,
it's going to further divide the country. I heard someone today that a rather radical legislator in Florida is going to. Florida is not a state that automatically triggers if Roe is overturned.
But there's 13 others that do.
But right, there are 13 that do, and a lot more that essentially do.
Right. 22
in total, I think, that essentially do. This legislator in question, I'm not going to say his name because he's a troll and he would love it. He is apparently going to introduce a bill banning all abortion, including rape, incest, life of the mother, in the state of Florida, criminalizing the doctors who recommend an abortion for a woman, no matter what the case, and making it illegal for a woman to travel out of state to receive an abortion. Now, you think that's an outlier, that's a crazy person, that's never passed. These people are the masters of the Overton window. They will shove and shove and shove and shove.
And they've had a long time to perfect this.
They've been practicing this for a long time.
And as someone who has, I've seen this, and I was very socially conservative for a long time, and I've shifted on some things. But I've personally been pro-life, and this is a very tough issue. But I understand the pragmatic application of this,
Sure.
especially of something over 50 years that has become a right, generation after generation of women. For conservatives, I've never been able to reconcile the idea of personal freedom with how they approach this issue as well. But the Alito decision goes into fetal personhood and a lot of other of the very rigid interpretations of this. And I think that it's not a final opinion, as we know. This was a draft. But to Rick's point about who could have potentially leaked it, the motivation behind it is that if someone from the right does, that it will embolden the 5 justices to stick to their guns and not seem as though that they succumb to the liberal left on this issue. So that was their motivation versus the other side, which is if the house is on fire, we've got to let someone know. I think both are plausible, but there is more to come on this. We'll obviously. This reinforces why we do what we do and why we always say you have to be engaged because elections matter, because this is what the Republicans have been doing for decades, which is installing people at the state and local levels, everything from city council to school board to state legislatures to secretaries of state. This is when it all comes home to roost. And if they use this approach to overturn Roe v. Wade, what other rights that aren't enumerated in the Constitution will they go after? Gay marriage, interracial marriage. What else?
Listen,
Ken
Paxton in Texas already has asked for an opinion that to allow Texas to overturn gay marriage if the Obergefell decision is overturned.
That's right.
Do not expect less from these people, folks. Always expect more. You should always think about. Even if they fail in their effort, they're going to keep trying to push that line further and further. Mm-hmm. This is why the elections this fall are so important, because it's not simply about abortion.
Right.
It's not simply about gay marriage. It's not simply about a broader generalized right to privacy. It is about the fact that the other side of the political equation in this country is so drunk on power that they are going to race as fast as they can unless they are checked, unless they are stopped. And this is not a hope. This world is not hopeless. I tell people this all the time.
Right. Far from it.
Tara, you and I were on a call yesterday with some folks, and I think some of them felt like, just too much is coming at us too fast. It's too hard. The other side's too good at this. Bullshit. Stand up, get up every day, and you make the choice. You can go out and get up again every morning and get back in the fight every single day and push forward, or you can lay down and die.
I mean, people need to go back and look at and study, recent history and wars. Look at could you imagine in the Civil War, if there's a couple of setbacks by the Union, did they go, well, this is too hard. We're going to give up now.
Sure.
Or what happened in World War II? Well, the Nazis won, they're taking over. Well, this is too hard. Those were unbelievable fights for existential threats to existence, for humanity, and here we are. This is basically a keyboard war. Nobody's taking up arms just yet. No one's being conscripted into a war. Go look at what's happening in Ukraine. That's really fucking hard, and they're not giving up. So we need to buckle up here in this country and understand the nature of the fight, because I don't know that so many people do. I know the Republicans do, because this is a doomsday apocalyptic thing, and they've been instilling this into their people for years. Democrats need to do the same, but not be as hysterical. They need to be impassioned and focused and committed and unified.
Yeah, and I will say this. I think last night we may have seen a preview for what the future of the parties looks like in the great state of Ohio.
Which is a great transition to our primary discussion.
Somehow I knew.
Yes. What happened last night in Ohio with JD Vance being thrust into first place after Donald Trump endorsed him, and he ran around campaigning with the bottom of the barrel, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Don Jr. and the whole swamp of Trump world there. That right there is something that I think people need to realize, that if you have candidates like a JD Vance, who is the ultimate hypocrite, that can change his stripes, but he has the ability to say a couple of buzzwords and not be held accountable for it, then here he is now trying to act as though everyone forgets who he actually really is. And I want to applaud Tim Ryan, who is the Democratic nominee, the congressman now running for Senate, for immediately putting his foot on the gas and releasing an ad attacking JD Vance with his own words, showing how he has disparaged Ohioans, how he's made fun of them, and how he was a hypocrite. Every day they need to do that. Every day.
We had one of our own in that regard as well.
Yes, and actually we should show it right now.
Yeah, we should show that. Let's show what we did. And folks, this is sarcasm.
Satire.
Sarcasm. Satire. Sarcasm.
The Lincoln Project salutes our fellow Never Trump activist, JD Vance. He led the way in opposing Trump in 2016, even calling Trump our Hitler.
JD Vance speculated that Trump might be America's Hitler.
Trump is the fruit of the party's collective neglect. I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon, or that he's America's Hitler.
Are you a racist?
JD joined John Kasich as the only major Republicans in Ohio to vote against Donald Trump in 2016, and he boldly told the truth about Trump voters.
We are, whether we like it or not, the party of lower income, lower education white people.
Trump is cultural heroin.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching us when we apologize for this man.
JD Vance is a multimillionaire big tech banker with a degree from Yale, our kind of candidate. He gets it. JD Vance for Senate, the Lincoln Project candidate.
You know, the folks, I have to say this about JD. And I actually took some shit because in my second book, I wrote a little thing about how hillbilly elegy had been suddenly transformed by a lot of Republicans like Steve Bannon as this excuse for releasing this racial animus and this anti-immigrant situation and all these things inside the Republican base. But JD is an elitist, okay? He comes from humble beginnings, but the guy went to Yale. The guy is a venture capitalist who does business deals around the world.
And
the
moved
guy
to
works
San
for
Francisco.
Peter Thiel, for fuck's sake.
Right.
He lives in San Francisco. This is not the salt of the earth, coal miners, whatever anymore. This is a guy who's fully bought into the American success story. And the fact that he is now pretending that he is this aggrieved culture warrior who is just like Matt Gaetz. Let me tell you something. Marjorie Taylor Greene couldn't get into any one of JD Vance's private clubs unless she was there with the fucking caterers.
Yeah,
okay?
parking cars.
This guy is a truly low figure because he doesn't believe any of it. Now, it worked because Peter Thiel is a lot of money for Donald Trump. And Thiel went to Trump and said, here's what it costs. What does it cost me to get you to back my guy? Trump gave him a number. He paid the number. Off we go to the races. I will say this also. The future of the Democratic Party, I want Democrats for once in your fucking lives, okay, to get as excited about a moderate Democrat who can win in a red state as you do about hopeless 1,000,000-to-1 shots that will never, ever win in a red state.
Oh, amen to that. Amen to that.
I'm sorry. MJ Hagar, lovely person, never gonna win. Okay? You knew it. You knew it. And the Democrats in 2020 spent about $400 million on candidates who absolutely will not going to win in their states.
Like McGrath.
Like McGrath, Hagar. I mean, just look, Harrison, all these people need to understand that Tim Ryan, I hope you don't like everything Tim Ryan says. I hope National Democrats don't like everything he says. You know why? Because Ohio voters will. It's a red state. It's a conservative state. But he's a centrist Democrat who is a trade union Democrat, who is a workers-oriented Democrat, who is a nuts and bolts, fill the fucking potholes Democrat. You guys should run to him with $1 jillion in everything you've got. I hope people will dedicate time and effort and resources to Tim Ryan because he can absolutely break the momentum of this idea that only Republicans can talk to working class Americans.
Absolutely. And the people who voted for Dolan, who was the Trump light candidate.
The Mitch McConnell candidate.
Yes, the Mitch McConnell candidate who said he still supported Trump but didn't support the big lie. His family owns the Cleveland Guardians. It used to be the Cleveland Indians, now the Guardians. And he did very well in the suburban areas outside of Cleveland and Columbus, and where the larger portions of voters are, but not enough. Obviously, he didn't win, but he had a little surge there for a minute where people thought there was a chance.
Right.
But where are those voters going to go? Are they really going to JD Vance? Are they? Maybe, maybe not.
Well, we're going to remind those voters this year that if they are going to JD Vance, they're going to Donald Trump. They're going to 1-6. They're going to Marjorie Three Toes. They're going to Matt Gaetz. They're going to Jim Jordan. All the Crazy Town Mutant Parade.
Yes,
that's what they're going to own. And look, folks, we've said this before. The Bannon line in 2020 was between 3 and 8% of American voters. We now believe the Bannon line is somewhere between 7 and 11% of American voters. There are many things happening in the culture and in the climate politically that is actually expanding that line.
Yeah, and do these people want to be a part of the parade of pariahs? Because that's who they are.
The parade of pariahs. I love that. That's a good one.
Thank you. Is that what, is that who they want to be a part of? Because that's what they're signing on to. JD Vance talked about he's an America first guy, and it's about, China and sending our jobs overseas. We're not going to do that. And, he used all the buzzwords, but they need to be clear about what America first really means. It doesn't just mean, keep jobs in America and keeping fentanyl out of, illegal aliens crossing over and all. It's so much bigger than that. It is authoritarianism to accomplish these goals, because next thing you know, then you have these people in power that are taking away fundamental rights. Next thing you know, you're going, how did we get here? You have insurrections going on at the Capitol under the name of patriotism. That's what supporting America first is. Right. So don't think that the Glenn Youngkins and the JD Vances with their fucking Brooks Brothers sweaters and their Patagonia, jackets, all of a sudden that they're not that bad. They're actually worse because they know what they're doing. Right. And they're ushering this in.
Do these Daner hiking boots make my ass look fascist?
One other thing about Ohio, which I think was very important for us to point out, and it ties into January 6th. So there's been some updates on January 6th. We'll get to that in a second. But we mentioned this a couple months ago on the breakdown about how at the time in January, maybe more now, but 57 people who were at the insurrection on January 6th were running for office.
Right.
So instead of, we're living in the upside down times because, in the past, participating in a violent insurrection should have been a disqualifier.
Call me crazy. I think that should be something where you spend time in jail rather than in an elective body.
Or certainly not a viable candidate to be elected. However, 57 people are running. In 2021, 11 people who were at the January 6th insurrection got elected already. 11 people, from school board members to state legislators to city council members. Okay. In your state and locality, somebody may have been elected that was part of this. Now we go into 2022 and more of these fuckers are running for office and possibly in positions to win. And an example of that happened right in Ohio last night, in Ohio 9. And this guy, J.R. Majewski, okay, right. He is a huge Trump supporter, huge sycophant, QAnon crazy. He upset two more, I guess, palatable Republicans. That is Marcy Kaptur's district. And they redistricted that district, where before it was like plus 13 Biden. Now it's plus 3 Republican. That was with redistricting. So this QAnon crazy has a chance to oust I forget how many terms. Marcy Kaptur's been there for a long time.
A long time, 40 years.
Yeah, 14 terms, maybe something like that.
A long time.
Yeah. Oh, is it 40 years? Has she been there that long?
No, 30 years.
Okay. When I worked in the Hill, she used to do a lot of bipartisan stuff on marijuana laws and stuff like that. But anyway, but there's a chance that she'll get ousted by a QAnon crazy, because this is what they've been able to do by manipulating the system with redistricting. So we have to pay close attention to the people who are winning in these primaries and make sure that they're not rewarded for being insurrectionists. This is where you have to pay attention.
It really is. And I have to say this. If the Democrats do not understand that every one of these crazies that's running, you have to attach the crazy people to the ones who don't look crazy.
Exactly.
You have to find the Republicans who are pretending they're normal people and attach them. Why aren't you endorsing the guy that was there on 1/6? What do you don't believe 1/6 was a tourist visit? What are you saying? Don't you have an icon to St. Ashley Babbitt in your house? What are you saying? You know, I think it's important they do that, and it's strategically wise because
that's what Republicans do to Democrats.
It's
all
exactly
the time.
Right.
Every single person is a squad member.
Why do you think they say Democrats and Black Lives Matter?
Right.
They want you to think of those things together.
Democrats
it's
and
not subtle racism. It's just right out there.
That's right.
But association is a powerful psychological tool in politics, and it's important. I would argue that our Democratic friends start placing these crazy QAnoners and these 1/6 people exactly in proximity with the rest of their party. So when Kevin McCarthy's out beating the bushes on Wall Street for money, for John Smith, who's a normal-ish Republican,
right?
They have to think, oh, well, John Smith's also like the guy, you know, wearing the buffalo horns and the flag makeup.
Right.
John Smith's also like the Confederate flag guy or the guy taking a dump in the Capitol Dome.
Or like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Madison Cawthorn and Paul Gosar, who, by the way, they endorsed this J.R. Majewski guy also. I mean, they have to make the association. That's what Republicans did. Listen, our good friend, Michael Steele, when he was chairman of the RNC back in 2010, let me tell you, it was a very successful year for the Tea Party and Republicans. Why? Because Michael Steele went around on a bus tour around the country, tying everyone to Nancy Pelosi. It didn't matter if you were a moderate Democrat or it didn't matter if you disagree with Nancy on some things, but Nancy Pelosi was the boogeyman to all Republicans. They knew it. And they did a 50-state bus tour tying everyone to Nancy Pelosi. And what do Republicans do now? Now that's replaced with AOC and the squad. Everyone from Abigail Spanberger or Slotkin or some of the more moderates, which are most of the party, no, they're all the squad. They're all AOC.
That year, when Michael was chairman, I did super PAC ads, I think in 38 states, 35 states maybe, and a lot of them red states, a lot of them red districts, but they were all like, you know that John Smith says he's a moderate Democrat, but he's a San Francisco Pelosi liberal.
Right.
He's liberal. Even liberals think he's liberal.
Right.
Shout out to Arthur Finkelstein.
So, that's anyway, but this is wisdom because this is the long game. This is the long game. And believe me, we know about what we speak of because
we've been to this rodeo,
there.
folks.
One other thing about Ohio, which was a good repudiation of the super, super left progressives. Chantel Brown beat out Nina Turner. It wasn't even close. So the Bernie Bros side of the Democrats, sorry, folks, but it's not happening this time. And so she won, which is a good
even
thing.
In a Democratic district.
Yes.
A quite Democratic district, they were like, no, that flavor is a little too spicy for us.
Exactly, because it's Ohio. It's not Brooklyn. So,
I'd also like to, one other piece of good news out of Ohio is that Rhino, cuck, shill, Trump-hating, libtard,
Mike DeWine?
Failure Mike DeWine beat the ever-loving shit out of his MAGA-ish opponents in the governor's race, in the governor's primary.
Yes. But Mike DeWine did, of course, throw support behind JD Vance because that's what Republicans who are, dedicated to their party.
The tribe.
Country. Yes. Couple of quick updates before we go. It's usually on Tuesday, but we still want to show you guys some of the stuff we've missed in the Republican Party.
The festivities of last week were choice.
Let's roll it.
God breaks Bill Gates. Yeah! Now that I've said that to Satan and his minions, let us move to the news.
Conservatives are becoming cool.
We're going to
take sex education out of the schools and put it back in the homes where it belongs.
The left controls big tech, big media. The left controls higher education. The left controls Hollywood. It controls big corporations. It controls big sports.
Twitter is nothing. It's powerless. And how we really make it powerless is we leave.
I want my Twitter account back.
A lot of Americans have felt like mushrooms over the last couple of years. We can change that.
We've endorsed JP, right? JD Mandel.
Now, some people think this was a gaffe. I think this is just President Trump, Josh, hedging his bets.
The former president's obvious, keen mental acuity.
They call me stupid.
I think you voted for Trump in obviously 16 and 20. Would you vote for him again in 24?
You know, I don't think he should be our nominee.
Rather than talking constantly about the last
I don't
election.
talk constantly, but you brought it up.
You do.
You brought it up.
Come on, eat away.
Excuse me. You brought it up. I didn't. I don't talk about it very much.
I don't claim to be a journalist. I claim to be a talk show host.
Right now, we're going outside this country to get things made. And they don't have the regulation, but we bring them back in this country where we get all the regulation and getting things made.
The sex trafficking cabal, where they make billions of dollars off of harvesting kids.
There you can see it. It's very, very clear. It doesn't move day or night. It's demonic. It is a satanic portal. It is access to this earth by those who are evil, and only by closing it will we be successful in saving this nation under God.
Round up all the Muslim Marxists who tried to stage that coup, but General Flynn made sure that wouldn't do. Round up all the Hollywood petties, the mainstream media too. Your days of lying to us are through.
You know, as I've pointed out before, when Roger Stone usually talks about a satanic portal, it's what he calls his prison wallet.
Oh my God, Rick. Add that to the Rick After Dark archives, please.
Indeed.
Roger Stone's Satan portal. Listen, I think it speaks for itself, what we just saw. And one of the crazier parts of that, besides the Satan portal and their weird obsession with making these corny songs and other weird obsessions, but we have more primaries coming up. We have more of them, right? Yes. Last night was Indiana and Ohio. Next week, I think, is Nebraska and West Virginia. The week after that is the kind of the super primary coming up, which has Pennsylvania in it, and which we're keeping an eye on. Yeah. And Georgia's coming up. Herschel Walker is probably going to win the Georgia Senate primary for Republicans. Yep. Herschel Walker is dumb as paint. And he is not only a violent, wife beater and, has a proclivity for violence, and clearly he's mentally unstable. But this is the guy that Donald Trump has endorsed. Now, people are all up in, Donald Trump is 55-0 so far with the people he's endorsed. And, he still has. Yes, that's true for right now. But, I struggle, Rick, between I want Donald Trump's crazy people to win these primaries so that sane people can win in a general election. But I also don't want people to sit there and think okay, Donald Trump is taking over the party again, so we might as well. I don't know. I have weird feelings.
It's got to be pedal to the metal all the way down.
Yes.
You can't ever presume that just because JD Vance is a semi-obvious crypto-fascist, that it's going to be an easy skate. You can't just assume that because Herschel Walker is crazier than a shithouse rat, that it's going to be an easy skate. This is always going to be work all the way through election day. But look, folks, we look forward to coming back in a I guess a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll be back back to our normal schedule the week of May 16th.
That's right, May 16th.
But we will be back next Wednesday again for a special edition because we want to talk about the primaries. And we obviously, if we can't go on vacation too long because what happens is all hell breaks loose.
What are these vacations you speak of?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a hiatus. Everyone's still working, but it's not technically a vacation. No one's on a beach. But, this used to be like Rush Limbaugh used to joke that when he went off air on vacation, that all hell would always break loose. It'd be some major story. Back in the day, he used to always say that. I feel like that happens every time we do this, but it's just part of our normal, a spring cleaning type of things. And we come back and new and improved. But so we will be back next Wednesday at 7:00. So be sure to tune in for that. And one last thing before we go. before we went on break, we said we were asking you all to support voting for the Lincoln Project in the Webby Awards. And I'm pleased to announce, because Rick is too humble to say anything.
Thank you.
But I'm pleased to announce that the Lincoln Project has in fact won a Webby Award, thanks to your support and your voting for the corporate responsibility campaign, including the Toyota ads. So that is amazing. Congrats to Rick and the creative team and all the hard work that you guys put into it. And thank you to you guys for supporting us and voting and making it happen. So
really mattered. It really mattered a lot, folks. Really appreciate it.
Yes. And so until we see you next week, go ahead, join the union. Check that out if you want to get involved on the grounds, grassroots. We're still working. We're still cooking. And there's no rest for the weary here.
And stay tuned later this week. We'll be releasing our targeted races for democracy.
Yes, indeed. Until next